Hi there, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. Today, we'll be exploring the legacy of Spartan warfare, unmasking the secrets of their legendary training, and discovering what made them one of the most formidable warriors of their time. Prepare to be amazed by their tactics, weaponry, and fighting style. Let's dive into the world of these epic heroes and find out what made them stand out on the battlefield. First, let's unravel the myths and realities of the Spartan way of life. Sparta was a military state run by an oligarchy, meaning that only a small group of people had the power to govern the city-state. This group was made up of elders who were chosen for their wisdom and experience. The government was also supported by two kings who were responsible for leading the military. This system of government worked well for Sparta because it meant that the city-state was always prepared for war. However, it also meant that there was no room for democracy or individual freedom. Spartans were not allowed to question the authority of the government, and they had to obey the laws without hesitation. They were also not allowed to travel outside of Sparta without permission, which meant that they were cut off from the rest of the Greek world. Despite these restrictions, Sparta was able to thrive for centuries. The government was able to keep the citizens of Sparta safe from their enemies, and the economy was strong. It was not until the city-state was defeated by the Romans that the Spartan way of life began to decline. Spartan training was a rigorous and demanding process that began at a very young age. All Spartan boys were expected to undergo the agoge, a form of education that emphasized obedience, endurance, and self-discipline. At the age of 7, boys would be sent to live with a group of other young men and women where they would learn the skills necessary to be a good Spartan warrior. They were taught how to read, write, music, gymnastics, and how to fight with weapons. They were also taught the history of Sparta and its people so that they would be prepared to defend their city-state against any enemy. The training was extremely tough, and only the strongest and most disciplined were able to complete it. Many boys did not have what it takes to be a Spartan warrior, and they were sent home to live a more normal life. Those who completed the training were rewarded with the title of anaphors, a member of the ruling class of Sparta. They were now considered full citizens and were allowed to participate in politics and make decisions about the future of Sparta. Sparta vs Athens, the clash of two ancient titans. The rivalry between Sparta and Athens was one of the most intense and enduring of the ancient world. It was a clash of two titans, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. Sparta was a militaristic society that valued strength, discipline, and obedience. Athens was a cultural and intellectual center that celebrated freedom, democracy, and the arts. The rivalry between the two city-states came to a head in the Peloponnesian War, which lasted from 431 to 404 BC. The war was fought over control of the Delian League, a coalition of Greek city-states that had been formed to fight against the Persians. Sparta was backed by the powerful Persian king Xerxes I, while Athens was supported by the growing navy of the Delian League. The war was long and bloody, but ultimately Sparta emerged victorious. The defeat of Athens marked the end of the Golden Age of Athens and the beginning of Spartan dominance in Greece. However, the rivalry between the two city-states would continue for centuries. Now let's talk about the dark side of Spartan society. While Sparta is often celebrated for its military achievements, it's important to remember that this was a society that valued strength and discipline above all else. This meant that there was little room for compassion, empathy, or individual freedom. Spartans were raised from a young age to be obedient and subservient to the state, and any form of dissent was met with harsh punishment. Women in Sparta were expected to be subservient to men and had limited rights. They were also forbidden from participating in politics or holding any kind of public office. Slavery was also widely accepted in Sparta, and the helots were treated as property. They were forced to work the land and provide food and other goods for the Spartan citizens, and were denied any kind of freedom or autonomy. Furthermore, Sparta was a deeply conservative society that was resistant to change. This meant that new ideas and innovations were often stifled, and the city-state was unable to adapt to the changing times. The Spartans' refusal to compromise or adapt ultimately led to their downfall, when they were eventually conquered by the Macedonian king Philip II. Contrary to popular belief, Spartans were more than just warriors. They were also farmers, craftsmen, and merchants. The vast majority of Spartans were actually farmers who grew food for themselves and their families. Some Spartans were also skilled craftsmen who made weapons and other goods for the military. Others were merchants who traded with other city-states. Despite this, Spartans were still expected to participate in military training and to be prepared to fight at a moment's notice. This meant that even if a Spartan was a farmer or a merchant, they still had to learn how to fight with weapons. And they had to be ready to drop everything and take up arms if their city-state was attacked. Overall, life as a Spartan was both challenging and rewarding. Spartans were a proud and independent people who valued strength, courage, and discipline. They were fiercely loyal to their city-state and were willing to make great sacrifices to protect it. However, they also lived in a time of constant conflict and had to deal with the threat of war on a daily basis. Now let's check out 10 interesting facts about Spartans. Number 1. Spartan women were some of the freest in the ancient world. They were allowed to own property, travel independently, and even engage in political discussions. They were also expected to participate in athletic competitions and were encouraged to develop their bodies to their fullest potential. Number 2. Spartans kept their helots in check with the use of surveillance and intimidation. Every helot had to pay a yearly tax to their Spartan master, and they were forbidden from owning weapons. Spartans also had a secret police force known as the Cryptia, whose job it was to spy on the helots and report any suspicious activity. Number 3. Spartans valued obedience and conformity above all else. From a young age, Spartan boys were taken from their families and sent to live in military barracks, where they were trained to be obedient soldiers. They were not allowed to have personal possessions and were forbidden from expressing any individuality. Number 4. Spartans believed that death in battle was the greatest honor a soldier could achieve. When a Spartan soldier died in battle, his body was brought back to the city and given a hero's funeral. His family was granted certain privileges, such as a special seat in the theater and the right to display his weapons and armor in their home. Number 5. Spartans used a form of shaming known as paideia to keep their citizens in line. This involved public humiliation and was used to punish anyone who broke the laws or disgraced their family. Spartans believed that shaming was an effective way to prevent people from breaking the law in the first place. Number 6. Spartans believed that their city-state was the center of the universe, and that their way of life was superior to all others. This led to a sense of arrogance and entitlement, which ultimately contributed to their downfall. Number 7. Spartans were fiercely independent and never allowed themselves to be ruled by a single monarch. Instead, they had a dual monarchy, with two kings who were responsible for leading the military. This system of government made it difficult for Sparta to unite with other city-states, which ultimately weakened them. Number 8. Spartans were notorious for their cruelty towards their enemies. They believed that it was necessary to instill fear in their opponents in order to maintain their dominance. Spartans would often torture their prisoners and show no mercy to those who surrendered. Number 9. Spartans were obsessed with maintaining their military superiority and would go to great lengths to ensure that their army was always the strongest in Greece. They implemented a system of mandatory military training for all male citizens and made it illegal for anyone to be unfit or unarmed. Number 10. Spartans refused to accept cultural influences from other city-states, which ultimately led to their isolation from the rest of Greece. They rejected the arts, philosophy, and literature of the Athenians, which ultimately contributed to their downfall. These facts show that the Spartans were a complex and fascinating people whose way of life was both admirable and terrifying. Their dedication to their city-state, their willingness to make sacrifices, and their commitment to excellence are all qualities that we can strive for today. However, their cruelty, their arrogance, and their refusal to compromise also serve as a warning to us all of the dangers of extremism. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the world of the Spartans. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.